who will introduce our guest speaker this evening, Brother Levere.
Thank you, Angus, for asking me to introduce Wade to the group. Wade grew up on a farm in southwestern Manitoba. He left the farm after graduating high school and lived in Brandon for a while, where he attended Assiniboine Community College. After graduating, he spent a short time with the Canadian Armed Forces and then settled in Winnipeg in the late 80s. He worked at various jobs, then attended the University of Manitoba, where he obtained a Bachelor of Computer Science degree. He then spent the next 10 years working in the IT field. During this time, Wade was very politically active, and during the federal election of 2006, he was one of 3 campaign managers who ran the campaign that defeated the president of the Treasury Board. He then switched careers and worked for a member of parliament for Winnipeg South in 2007. Wade moved his family to Ottawa so he could work on Parliament Hill. And while working for a number of MPs, senators, and ministers, he also attended Carleton University and graduated with a BA honors degree in law. He then attended University of Ottawa Law School, where he obtained a Juris Doctor degree, and he has recently passed the Ontario Law Society bar exam. He still works on Parliament Hill, and he is looking forward to being called to the bar. In 2012, Wade was initiated into St. Andrew's Lodge, number 560, and was raised in May of 2013. While Wade was working all day and studying at night to become a lawyer, he still found the time to serve our lodge for 2 years as our assistant secretary, and then he put in an additional 2 years as our full-time secretary. As Wade's sponsor, I am very proud of his dedication to the lodge and to our craft over the past 9 years. And I'm really looking forward to this presentation that Wade's going to give tonight on Robbie Burns. Wade is a real believer in Robbie Burns and everything Scottish, so this should be well done. Over to you guys.
Well, thanks, Wayne, for that really kind introduction. I really appreciate it. I'm actually going to share my screen because I'm going to switch over here and I'm going to give a presentation, a slide presentation here. So if everyone could bear with me for a moment, I'm just going to switch over here. I'm just going to dive right into this presentation. So here goes. Robert Burns, also known as Robbie Burns, the National Bard, Bard of Ayrshire, and the Ploughman Poet and various other names, was a Scottish poet and a lyricist. He is widely regarded as the national poet of Scotland and is celebrated worldwide. He is the best known of the poets who have written in the Scots language, although much of his writing is in English and a light Scotch dialect, and is accessible to an audience beyond Scotland. He also wrote in standard English, and in these writings, his political or civil commentary is often at its bluntest. He is regarded as a pioneer of the Romantic movement, and after his death, he became a great cultural icon in Scotland and among the Scottish diaspora around the world. Celebration of his life and work became almost a national cult during the 19th and 20th centuries. His influence has long been strong on Scottish literature. In 2009, he was chosen as the greatest Scot by the Scottish public in a vote run by Scottish television. My slides aren't working, so just bear with me for a moment. There we go. In a tiny two-roomed cottage, clay-built and thatched roof, on the banks of the Doon, in the district of Kyle, 2 miles south of the town of Ayr in Scotland, Robert Burns was born January 25th, 1759. It was a peasant home such as afterwards described in the Cotter's Saturday Night, in which poverty was consecrated by piety, where the father was a priest of faith and the mother a guardian angel of the holy things of life. Here Burns grew up in poverty and hardship, and the severe manual labor of the farm left its traces in premature stoop and weakened constitution. So far from his schools were concerned, his education was limited to grammar, writing, and arithmetic. Later, he picked up a little Latin, some French, and knowledge of English and classic poets. Despite his ability and character, Robert's father was consistently unfortunate and migrated with his large family from farm to farm without ever being able to improve the circumstances. In 1777, they moved to a farm near Tarbolton, where they stayed until his father's death in 1784. The family became integrated into the community of Tarbolton. Robert joined a country dancing school in 1779, and with his brother Gilbert formed the Tarbolton Bachelors Club the following year. His earliest existing letters date from this time, when he began to make romantic overtures to Alison Begbie, in spite of 4 songs written for her and a suggestion that he was willing to marry her. She rejected him. In 1781, Burns moved temporarily to Irvine to learn how to become a flax dresser, but during the workers' celebrations for New Year in 1781-82, the flax shop caught fire and was burnt to the ground. This venture accordingly came to an end, and Burns went home to the farm. During this time, he met and befriended Captain Richard Brown, who encouraged him to become a poet. He continued to write poems and songs and began a commonplace book. Burns also collected folk songs from across Scotland and often revising or redacting them. His poem, Auld Lang Syne, is often sung at Hogmanay. Other poems and songs of Burns that remain well known across the world today include A Red, Red Rose, A Man's a Man for All That, To a Louse, To a Mouse, The Battle of Shermere, Tam O'Shanter, A Fond Kiss, Scots and Scots Way Hey, which served for a long time as an unofficial national anthem of the country. On the 27th of November, 1786, Burns borrowed a pony and set forth out for Edinburgh. On the 14th of December of that year, Will & Creech issued subscription bills for the first Edinburgh edition of poems, chiefly in the Scottish dialect, which was published on the 17th of April, 1787. Within a week of this event, Burns had sold his copyright to Creech for 100 guineas. For the edition, Creech commissioned Alexander Naismith to paint the oval bust-length portrait, now in the Scottish National Portrait Gallery, which was engraved to provide a frontispiece for the book. Naismith had come to know Burns, and his fresh and appealing image has become the basis for almost all subsequent representations of the poet. In Edinburgh, he was received as an equal by the city's men of letters, including Dugald Stewart, Robertson, Blair, and others, and was a guest at an aristocratic gatherings where he bore himself with an unaffected dignity. Here he encountered and made a lasting impression on the 16-year-old Walter Scott, who described him later with great admiration. He said, "His person was strong and robust, his manners rustic, not clownish, a sort of dignified plainness and simplicity which received part of its effect perhaps from knowledge of its extraordinary talents. His features are presented in Mr. Naismith's picture, but to me it conveys the idea that they are diminished, as if seen in perspective. I think his countenance was more massive than it looks in any other portraits. There was a strong expression of shrewdness in all his lineaments. The eye alone, I think, indicated the poetic character and temperament. It was a large and dark cast, and literally glowed when he spoke with feeling or interest. I never saw such another eye in a human head, though I have seen the most distinguished men of my time. Robert Burns' first child, Elizabeth Beth Burns, was born in 1785 to his mother's servant, Elizabeth Patton, while he was embarking on a relationship with Gina Moore, who became pregnant with twins in March of 1786. He also embarked on a relationship with the separated Agnes Nancy Leclese, with whom he exchanged passionate letters under pseudonyms. When it became clear that Nancy would not be easily seduced into a physical relationship, Burns moved on to Jenny Clow, who was Nancy's domestic servant, and also bore him a son, Robert Burns Clow, in 1788. He also had an affair with a servant girl, Margaret May Cameron. His relationship with Nancy concluded in 1791 with a final meeting in Edinburgh before she sailed to Jamaica, for what turned out to be a short-lived reconciliation with her estranged husband. Before she left, Burns sent her the manuscript of A Fond Kiss as a farewell. In 1787, Burns signed a paper attesting to his marriage to Jean, but her father was in the greatest distress and fainted away. To avoid disgrace, her parents sent her to live with her uncle in Paisley. Although her father initially forbade it, they were married in 1788. Jean bore him 9 children, 3 of whom survived infancy. Burns fell in love with Mary Campbell, whom he had seen in church while he was still living in Tarbolton. She was born near Dunoon and had lived in Campbellton before moving to work in Ayrshire. He dedicated the poems The Highland Lassio, Highland Mary, and to Mary in Heaven to her. His song, Will Ye Go Into the Indies, My Mary, and Leave Old Scotia's Shore, suggests that they planned to emigrate to Jamaica together. Their relationship had been the subject of much conjecture, and it has been suggested that on the 14th of May, 1786, they had exchanged Bibles and plighted their troth over the water of Fale in a traditional form of marriage. Soon afterwards, Mary Campbell left work in Ayrshire and went to the seaport of Greenock and sailed home to her parents in Campbellton. In October of 1786, Mary and her father sailed from Campbellton to visit her brother in Greenock. Her brother fell ill with typhus, which she also caught while nursing him. She died of typhus on either the 20th or 21st of October of 1786 and was buried there.
Oh, my love is like a red, red rose that's newly sprung in June. Oh, my love is like a melody that's sweetly played in tune. As fair thou art, my bonny lass, so deep in love am I. But I will love thee still, my dear, till the seas gang dry. Till the seas gang dry, my dear, and the rocks melt wi' the sun. But I will love thee still, my dear, though the sands of life do run. So fare thee well, my only love, and fare thee well a while. But I would come again, my dear, though it were 10,000 mile.
Freemasonry has no greater name than Robert Burns. He is undeniably the greatest poet of Freemasonry, the singer alike of its faith and its friendship, its philosophy and its fun, its passion and its prophecy. He was the laureate of the hopes and dreams of the lowly of every land. There is no higher tribute for any man to say justly that the world is a gentler and more joyous for having lived, and that may be truly said of Robert Burns. Burns, whose very name is an emblem of pity, joy, and the magnetism of brotherly love. It is therefore Burns is loved as much for his weaknesses as for his strengths, and all the more because he was such an unveneered human being. It is given but to a few men thus to live in the hearts of their fellows. And today around the world, the memory of Burns is a living force, uniting men of many lands into fellowship of liberty, justice, and charity. Robert Burns was initiated into the Masonic Lodge St. David of Tarbolton on the 4th of July, 1781, when he was 22 years of age. In the Cotler's Saturday night, July 4th, 1781, the minutes read, Robert Burns and Lockley was entered an apprentice, Joe Norman master. The second and third degrees were confirmed on the same evening in the month of October following his initiation. 6 years later, he was made a Knights Templar, as well as a Royal Archmason in Eyemouth, as under the old regime, the two were always given together. By this time, he had won some fame as a poet, and the higher degrees were given to him in a token of both his fame as a poet and his enthusiasm as a Mason. On July 27th, 1784, Burns was elected Deputy Master of St. James Lodge, Tarbolton, a position which he held until 1788. He was made an honorary member of St. John's Lodge number 22, Kilmarnock, on October 26, 1786. Major William Parker, the master of the St. John's Lodge, became a great friend of Burns and subscribed for 35 copies of the first edition of his poems. He is the Willie in the song Ye Sons of Old Killie, composed and sung by Burns on the occasion of his admission as an honorary member of St. John Lodge. The minutes of this meeting read, Robert Burns, poet, a member of St. James Tarbolton, was made an honorary member of this lodge. This was the first lodge to distinguish Burns with the designation poet and to honor him with an honorary membership.
Ye sons of old Killie, assemble by Willie to follow the noble vocation. Your thrifty old mother has scarce another to sit in that honoured station. I've little to say, but only to pray, as praying's a ton of your fashion. I pray from the muse you may well excuse to seldom her
I just lost control of my slides again, if everyone would bear with me for a second. And we'll try that again.
favourite passion. Ye powers who preside o'er the wind and the tide, who mark the gentleman's border, who formed this frame with beneficent aim, whose sovereign statute is order. Within this dear mansion may wayward contention, nor withered envy ne'er enter. May secrecy around be the mystical bound, and brotherly love be the centre.
While I was in Edinburgh, Scotland in 2015, my wife and I were lucky enough to visit the Grand Lodge of Scotland. The curator, as you see here on the screen, Brother Robert Cooper, gave us a tour of the museum and the lodge room. It was a fantastic tour as well. While in the museum, Brother Cooper showed us where Dan Brown spent a week researching his work of fiction, The Da Vinci Code. In the corner between the bookcase and the painting that is shown in this photo is where Brown sat. It actually, where the aprons are now, is exactly where he sat. He also spoke in length with great pride about that painting. It is of Robert Burns' inauguration of a poet laureate. he spoke about the great contributions to Freemasonry that Burns made. That is when I realized how important Robert Burns is to Freemasonry. This is the painting that was on the wall. On February 1st, 1787, Burns became a member of the Lodge of Canongate, Kilwinning, number 2, Edinburgh, which possesses the most ancient lodge room in the world. And this lodge is said to have invested Burns with the title of Poet Laureate. And from which time on Burns would affix the word bard to his signature. Burns wrote a number of songs and poems in relation to Freemasonry, like the Master's Apron. There's money a badge that's uncowed bra, we ribbon, lace, and tape on. Let kings and princes wear them, give me the Master's apron. The honest craftsman's apron, the jolly Freemason's apron. Be he at home or roam afar, before his touch fuzz bolt and bar, the gates of fortune fly ajar. Gin he but wears the apron. For wealth and honor, pride and power are crumbling stains to base on. Eternity shall rule the hour, and ilka worth Mason. Each free and accepted Mason, each ancient crafted Mason. Then brothers let a hail some saying, arise your friendly ranks alang. Good wives and barons blithely sing to the ancient badge that we the apron string that is worn by the Master Mason. Another Masonic poem that Burns wrote is a presentation of the pillars. Long may this lodge in prosperity shine, and its members still vie with each other, in spreading the light of our order divine, and relieving the wants of a brother. May envy and malice in there enter the door that is I closed, tiled to the cowan. But peace, love, and harmony I be in store, more abundant the older your gowan. May our master who presides like the masters of old, in wisdom excel and astonish. May he never be heard erring brothers to scold, but with brotherly love I admonish. May our warden in the west, like the sun's setting rays, illuminate the golden horizon. May his strength never fail with the burden of days, but increase every moment that flies on. And to our warden in the south, like the beauty of day, may he gladden the worn, tired, and weary, inspire with his smiles as they rest by the way, the toilers, and make them feel cheery. And to you, whom our master is honored to rule and instruct, be ye always sober and steady, expert in the use of each working tool, and I hae them handy and ready. Thus will the temple we seek to appraise be completed when all do their duty, and our voices unite in a chorus of praise to wisdom, to strength, and to beauty. Besides being a faithful and enthusiastic attendant upon the meeting of his own lodge, Burns was a frequent visitor at lodge when away from home. It is said that with very few exceptions, all of his patrons and acquaintances were members of that fraternity. Burns' careless dress and untaught manners gave an impression of coarseness at first, but this was forgotten in the charm of his personality. Full of fun and fire, affable and the best of good company, his superior mind did not make him pompous, and he loved more than anything a festival and a feast where joy and goodwill were guests. Drinking was a habit in Scotland of those days to a degree that we can hardly imagine, as much as in the church and as in the lodge, and it made for the bitter tragedy of Robert Burns. Truth obliges us to admit that his moral failure was eagerly and pitiful, due alike to his environment and to a fatal frailty of which made him fitful, unstable, and a prey to every whim of fancy and of passion. It is an awful risk to me to be endowed with the genius of a Burns. It digs deep pitfalls for the man to whom it is given. Yet, if in his later years he was a degraded man of genius, he was never a man of degraded genius. The poison did never enter his song. As his health began to give away, he began to age prematurely and fell into fits of despondency. On the morning of July 21st, 1796, Burns died in Dumfries at the age of 37. The funeral took place on Monday, July 25th, 1796, the day that his son Maxwell was born. He was at first buried in the far corner of St. Michael's churchyard in Dumfries. A simple slab of freestone was erected as his gravestone by Jean, which some felt insulting to his memory. His body was eventually moved to its final location in the same cemetery, the Burns Mausoleum, in September of 1817. The body of his widow Jean was buried with him in 1834. No great poet whose name is linked with our craft ever owed more to Freemasonry or gave more to it. More intimately than any other, he was identified with its life, its genius, and its ideals. Its teachings moved his thought, its spirit inspired his song, its genius nurtured that love of freedom and fraternity for which he set to everlasting music. In the gentle air of Freemasonry, he found refuge from the hardship and heaviness of spirit, and its fellowship served to shelter him from the poisoned arrows of petty bigots. Surely it can be said of Robert Burns that his soul goes marching on. He was the poet of the rights and reign of the common people, whom it has been said God must love because he's made so many of them. When Burns appeared, the spirit of Scotland was at a low point. Her people were crushed and her ancient fire almost quenched. It was at such a time that a great singer took up his harp, inspired by the history of his people, the traditions of Wallace and Bruce stirring him like a passion, his soul attuned to the old ballads of love and daring, singing the simple life of his nation in his vivid and picturesque language. His passion for liberty, his affirmation for the nobility of man, his sense of dignity of labor. Such singers live as long as men love life, and their words become part of the sacred scriptures of the human heart. Burns honored a man for his worth, not his wealth. For the snob, for the fop, he had genuine contempt. He told the poor man that it is no sin to be poor, but that it is a sin to be ashamed of it. He taught that honest poverty is not only nobler, but happier than idolent or ill-gotten wealth. Such was the spirit of Robert Burns, a man passionate and pious, capable of withering scorn of wrong, quickly shifting from the ludicrous to the horrible in his fancy, poised between laughter and tears, and could send his soul into all the dark places of the world. Pity and joy would return in the common ways of man. Burns Night, in effect, a second national day in Scotland. It is celebrated on Burns' birthday, January 25th, with Burns suppers around the world, and is more widely observed in Scotland than the official national day, St. Andrew's Day. The first Burns supper took place in the Mother Club in Greenock, was held on what was thought to be his birthday, January 29th, 1802. In 1803, it was discovered from the parish records that the correct date was actually January 25th. Basic format starts with the general welcome and announcements, followed with the Selkirk Grace. After the grace comes the piping and cutting of the haggis, when Burns' famous address to the haggis is read, and the haggis is cut open. The event usually allows for people to start eating just after the haggis is presented. At the end of the meal, a series of toasts, often including the toast to the lassies, and replies are made. This is when the toast to the immortal memory, an overview of Burns' life and work is given. The event usually concludes the singing of Auld Lang Syne. In closing, I would like to highlight a song that Burns wrote for his farewell to the Brethren of St. James Lodge, Tarbolton in Scotland.
Adieu, a heart-warm, fond adieu, dear brothers of the mystic tide, ye favored, enlightened few, companions of my social joy. Though I to foreign lands must he, pursuing fortune's sliddery bound, with melting heart and brimful eye, I'll mind you still though far away.
Oft have I met your social band, and spent the cheerful festive night, oft honored with supreme command, presided o'er the sons of light, and by the hieroglyphic bright, which none but craftsmen ever saw, strong memory on my heart shall write those happy scenes when far away.
May freedom, harmony, and love unite you in the grand design. Beneath the omniscient eye above, the glorious architect divine, that you may keep the unerring line, still rising by the plummet's law, till order bright completely shine, shall be my prayer when far away.
And you farewell, whose merits claim justly that highest badge to wear. Heaven bless your honored noble name, to Masonry and Scotia dear. A last request permit me here, when yearly ye assemble all. One round I ask it with a tear, to him that bard that's far away.
And that's it for the presentation. I hope you liked it. I tried to make it as interesting as possible with a couple of videos there. So now if anyone has any questions, I will do my best to answer them. I'm going to take the screen off as well so you can see me again here.